Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Michael and I do real estate test prep for the state of Washington. So today's video, I thought I would just continue what I was doing yesterday by going through the entire real estate practice exam and do questions and answers. So let's get started. Okay, so question. A 3-year lease ends. The tenant is allowed by the landlord to stay on and to continue to pay rent on a month-to-month basis. This would be a what? Answer is periodic tenancy. Explanation. If a leasehold has no fixed termination date, but instead continues from one rental period to the next until one party gives the other notice of termination, it is a periodic tenancy or a periodic estate. Question. Branches of an apple tree hang over the fence, and overripe fruit falls into the neighbor's yard. This is an example of a what? Answer, encroachment. Explanation. An object that extends over a property's boundary line onto neighboring property is an encroachment on the neighboring property. An encroachment is not an encumbrance because it is not a right to use held by the encroaching property owner. However, if it is in a place long enough, it could ripen into a prescriptive easement. The purpose of a building code is to what? Answer, provide minimum standards for construction. Explanation. Building codes set minimum standards for construction materials and methods in order to protect the public from unsafe or unworkmanlike construction. Which is true regarding a standard 203B FHA loan? Answer, an FHA appraisal is required. Explanation. FHA loans require an appraisal by an appraiser who has met the educational and certification requirements for inclusion on the FHA's roster of approved appraisers. Question. Which of the following methods would be most appropriate for valuing a recently built single-family home? Answer, market analysis and replacement cost. Explanation. The sales comparison approach, also known as the market data or market analysis approach, is the best method for appraising residential property. Replacement cost, which is based upon the idea that a property is not worth more than it would cost to replace it, may also be suitable for a newer residential property. Question. A local bank refuses to make residential loans in a particular section of town because of the ethnic background of its residents. This is a discriminatory practice called what? Answer, redlining. Explanation. Refusing to make loans for discriminatory reasons is redlining, which is illegal. A square parcel of farmland measures 1,320 feet from north to south. In the center of the parcel is 8 acres of swampland that is not tillable. If the property sells for $2,000 per acre of tillable land, what is the selling price? Answer is $64,000. Explanation. First, you have to multiply the property boundaries to find its square footage. So 1,320 times 1,320 to equal 1,742,400 square feet. And then you convert that into acreage. So dividing the 1,742,400 square feet divided by the 43,560 for a square foot, which is 40 acres. And then subtract the usable portion, so the 40 acres minus the 8 acres to get 32 acres. And multiply by the price per acre. So 32 acres times 2,000 equals 64,000. Question. The property description in a deed reads, starting at the stone old stone wall, then going 120 feet, west 400 feet, north 80 feet, and east 210 feet. This description is what? Answer is invalid because it doesn't return to the point of beginning. Explanation. This property description is invalid because it does not return to the point of beginning. The courses and distances stated in a meets and bounds description must describe the entire perimeter of the parcel, starting and ending at the same point. Okay, question. A corporation takes title of real property through what? Answer is estate in severalty. Explanation. Property owned by a corporation is held in severalty because law regards a corporation as an artificial person, meaning a corporation cannot take title as a joint tenant because of its potentially perpetual existence. Question: for how long is a deed restriction valid? Answer: potentially forever. Explanation. Deed restrictions run with the land, which means that they bind all subsequent owners of the property. Although they may be terminated under certain circumstances, most restrictions are valid indefinitely and could last forever. Question. A seller tells a prospective buyer that the attic's insulation is 16 inches thick. The seller's agent, however, observes that the insulation is only 6 inches thick. The seller's agent should what? Answer: tell the prospective buyer that the insulation is only 6 inches thick. Explanation. A licensee has a duty to disclose material facts to the appropriate party. Even if the principal doesn't disclose that information himself, the insulation depth could be material fact, since insufficient insulation could be a negative effect on the property value. Okay, question. A 10-year-old home costs $120,000 to build, and the land it's on costs $20,000. If an appraiser finds that depreciation has averaged 1.5% per year, what is the total amount of depreciation of the property? The answer is $18,000. Explanation. Only the building itself is depreciated rather than the land, which cannot lose value due to depreciation. So you multiply 1.5% by 10 years, which is, 18,000. Okay, question. A property investor sells his 100-acre rural parcel of land with the restriction that the buyer may not divide the land into parcels smaller than the 1 acre each. This restriction is what? Answer is valid. This restriction doesn't violate public policy. Explanation. Deed restrictions are generally valid so long as they aren't unconstitutional, a violation of law, or contrary to judicial determinations of public policy. For example, deed restrictions prohibiting sales of non-white buyers violate fair housing laws and are invalid. Okay, question. A seller and a brokerage firm signs an exclusive listing agreement. The listing is set to expire in 3 months, but after a few weeks, the seller decides that she doesn't want to sell at all, which is true. Answer is the seller can revoke the listing but may be liable to the brokerage for damages. Explanation. An agency relationship may be terminated by revocation by the principal without the consent of the agent. Even so, the revocation of a listing agreement is often a breach of contract, in which case the principal, the seller, may be required to pay damages to the agent, the brokerage. Okay, question. An appraiser is valuing a commercial property that contains a restaurant run by the property owner. Which method of valuation would be most appropriate? Answer: income. Explanation. For a commercial property, the most appropriate method of valuation would be income approach, regardless of whether it contains an owner-operated business. Question. A buyer is considering purchasing a store in a standalone building in a strip mall. The building has steps in front without a ramp and no disability parking spots in front. The buyer's agent should tell the buyer that what? Answer: The property does not comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Explanation. A retail store open to the public would be a public accommodation subject to the Americans with Disabilities Act. The building's owner would need to remove architectural barriers to persons with disabilities, for instance, by building a wheelchair ramp. Okay, so guys, that's all I got for today. Come back for another part in my next video, and keep studying. I know we got this, and I'll see you then.